It was supposed to be an ordinary evening, a quiet return, a surprise scoop of vanilla ice cream with rainbow sprinkles, a small gesture from a father who hadn't had time in weeks to just be present. That's all Darius Cole expected as he pulled into his gated driveway. Silence, maybe a giggle from the upstairs room and the smile of a 6-year-old girl waiting for her favorite treat. But what he found would fracture him in a way no deal, no loss, no betrayal ever had. Darius had built an empire, slick glass towers, billion-dollar portfolios, and the kind of influence that opened doors with a glance. But behind one of those doors, his own something had slipped through the cracks, something no amount of power could undo. The house was quiet when he entered, not peaceful, not still, but quiet in a way that felt wrong, the kind of wrong that settles in your gut like a lead weight. He moved past the marble foyer, past the towering chandelier, the scent of lavender still fresh in the air. Then came the sound, not laughter, not cartoons, but a cry, fragile, muffled, like someone trying not to be heard. He followed it, heart beating faster, and that's when he saw her. His little girl, Maya, 6 years old, holding a mop that was nearly twice her size. Her small hands gripped it tightly. Her jeans were torn at the knees, her cheeks stained with old tears and newer dirt. But it wasn't just the image that shattered him, it was the red marks. Thin lines across her tiny arms, faint bruises blooming like shadows, a swollen eye. And right there in the center of his own home, the fortress he'd built for her was the truth. He had failed to protect the only thing that mattered. She stood frozen when she saw him. And in that moment, something shifted inside Darius. The cold steel of his business face cracked, and a fire replaced it. For 2 years, since losing Maya's mother, he had buried himself in boardrooms and calendars. He gave Maya everything: chefs, therapists, tutors, a hand-picked nanny. Vanessa, vetted, polished, referred by someone he trusted, but trust had become a gamble and he was losing. Maya didn't need another piano lesson. She needed her father, not in passing, not in promises, but in the present. He carried her to the couch that night and held her until the shaking stopped. She didn't speak much. Just one sentence, just enough to break him. She thought if she didn't mop fast enough, she'd be sent away, just like her mom. The weight of it all hit him like a train, the absence, the ignorance, the quiet choices that led to this very moment. He had handed over the reins of his daughter's safety, and now she bore the scars of his oversight. That night, silence filled the home, not the stillness of peace, but the kind that comes after a storm you never saw coming. Darius sat in the dim light of the living room, Maya curled in his arms, fast asleep but still gripping the fabric of his shirt like a lifeline. Her small body trembled occasionally as if the fear hadn't fully left her. And perhaps it hadn't, because fear doesn't vanish when the danger walks away. Sometimes it lingers in the walls, in the memories, in the corners of the mind where nightmares live quietly. But she wasn't the only one trembling. Darius, the man known for sealing multi-million-dollar contracts without blinking, couldn't stop the quiver in his own hands. Not from anger, from shame, the kind that crawls under your skin and whispers you should have known. And then came the footsteps again, soft, measured, almost arrogant in rhythm. Vanessa stood at the entrance of the hallway, a basket of freshly folded towels perched against her hip, as if nothing had happened. Her eyes widened for only a moment when she saw Darius holding Maya, bruises visible, tears dried on her cheeks, but there was no panic, no remorse, just a calculated calm. She said nothing of the marks, nothing of the pain, only one sentence: "You're home early." That was the moment Darius Cole stopped being the forgiving man. He stood up slowly, Maya still in his arms. His voice didn't raise, his words didn't stutter, but every syllable was sharp enough to cut glass. He demanded to know what she had done, what gave her the right. But Vanessa, she didn't crumble, she didn't apologize. Instead, she defended herself. She spoke of discipline, of structure, of how Maya had been acting out, breaking glasses, ignoring instructions. But Darius didn't care if she'd shattered every dish in the kitchen. He wasn't listening to justifications anymore. Not when his daughter had been reduced to trembling silence. Not when fear had become her routine. Not when she believed she had to earn her right to stay loved. Vanessa's mask slipped just a little. She spoke again, this time less like a nanny and more like someone who had been waiting to be challenged. She reminded Darius of his absence, of the deals he prioritized, of the way he left others to fill in the gaps. And for a split second her words landed. He had been gone too long, too often. But that did not excuse the bruises, or the fear, or the way Maya had tried to hide her pain behind silence. There are moments in life that demand action, not a meeting, not a memo, not a delay. Darius gave her a choice: leave or face the police. Vanessa stared at him, her expression shifting from indignation to realization. She knew it was over, not just the job, not just the paycheck, but the mask she had worn so well. She didn't argue again. She turned and left the room. And for the first time in weeks, Darius heard the sound of relief, not from his own lips, but from Maya's breath against his chest. He carried her to her room, tucked her in gently, and sat by her side until her breathing slowed into sleep. He didn't sleep, not that night. He sat in the darkness, watching her tiny fingers curl around his. And he realized that the fortress he had spent years building to protect his legacy had failed the one person who should have been safest in it. The morning sun filtered softly through the blinds, casting gentle lines across the hardwood floor. Maya sat at the breakfast table, her knees pulled up beneath her oversized blanket. She didn't say a word, didn't smile, just picked at her cereal, not eating, just pushing it around with her spoon. The usual sparkle in her eyes was gone. And Darius, he stood across the kitchen, phone in hand, staring out the window but seeing nothing. He had once spent entire mornings negotiating with CEOs, scanning contracts, evaluating projections. But today none of that mattered. Today his only focus was one thing: justice. By 9 a.m. he made the first call to his attorney, not his corporate counsel, not the board's legal rep, but a specialist in family law. And by noon Vanessa was gone, escorted out by uniformed officers, arrested on charges of child endangerment and abuse. It should have brought relief, closure. But Darius felt neither, because answers had become more important than outcomes. So he made another call, this time to someone outside the system, not a paper pusher, not a background check software vendor, but a man who used to work deep inside the child protection system, a private investigator who had seen the worst hidden behind the best. And within 48 hours the truth surfaced. The report was thick, heavy, like the kind of weight you feel on your chest before a storm. Page after page told a story Darius wasn't ready for. Vanessa Hill wasn't even her real name. Her full name was Vanessa Griggs, changed 4 years ago after a case of alleged negligence in Colorado. A family had accused her of emotional harm, of excessive punishment, but the charges had been dismissed. No follow-up, no press, just silence, and she disappeared into another state. It was all there, the breadcrumbs she had left behind, a trail of broken families, of withdrawn children. Of mothers who cried behind closed doors and fathers who didn't realize until it was too late. 3 children from another state were pulled from school mid-year due to behavioral trauma. Another report mentioned excessive restrictions in the home. Strict routines, silent meals, long hours of forced chores. Each family had dismissed her but never pursued it. Darius closed the file and felt the room spin. How had she gotten so far, slipped through so many cracks? And how had he, a man who scrutinized every contract, researched every merger, missed something so vital? He stormed into the investigator's office later that day, fists clenched, voice shaking with restrained fury. How wasn't this caught? The answer came quiet but firm. She knew the system, knew how to clean her trail, change addresses, stay under the radar, and most families, they don't look deep, they just move on. But Darius wasn't like most families anymore. He was a father. Now awake, the media caught wind within days. A leaked report, a headline, trusted nanny with dark past finally exposed. But he didn't care about headlines, he didn't need interviews or press conferences or camera flashes. He needed to heal what had been broken. And that healing wouldn't come from press releases or court hearings, it would come from pancakes. Yes, pancakes, because the next morning, instead of dialing into a boardroom, Darius was in the kitchen, mixing batter. Burning toast, pouring cereal into dinosaur-shaped bowls. And across the table, Maya watched, unsure, quiet but curious. She didn't smile yet, but she looked up, and for the first time in weeks she spoke. "Daddy, will she come back when the police let her go?" The question hit like ice water, but he crouched down beside her, eye to eye. And he told her softly, calmly, no, she would never come back, because he would never let anyone hurt her again. There was a silence. Then her small hand touched his chin. "You were gone a lot." He closed his eyes and for the first time allowed the guilt to settle. "I know," he whispered, "but I'm here now for good." And she leaned into his chest just a little, not fully, not yet, but it was a start. 2 months passed, not quickly, not easily, but deliberately. Each day began with the same quiet rituals. Waking up before the sun, preparing Maya's breakfast himself, brushing her hair gently, even if he didn't do it quite right. He began reading her favorite bedtime stories in voices that made her laugh again. They watched old cartoons on the couch, wrapped in blankets, and every night when she fell asleep, he sat by her side, just listening to her breathe. As if the rhythm itself was a reminder she was still here, safe. Darius turned down deals. Walked away from negotiations that would have added more zeros to his accounts. He didn't care. The only bottom line that mattered now was trust. Time, her smile, healing wasn't instant. It was quiet, subtle, like watching a flower open after a long winter. Some mornings Maya wouldn't speak at all. Other days she drew pictures, stick figures, a little girl holding a mop, a sad face behind a window. He saved everyone, hung them on the fridge like masterpieces, because to him they were. And through it all he learned something terrifying and beautiful. Children don't always speak their hurt in words. Sometimes they whisper through silence, through hesitation, through pictures that no one else notices, and he vowed to never miss a whisper again. The day of Vanessa's sentencing came on a grey morning. Darius dressed Maya himself, a soft yellow dress, her favorite, hair pulled back in a neat puff. She held his hand tightly in the courtroom, her small fingers laced between his. Her eyes scanned the room, watching, waiting. Vanessa sat across from them, no longer composed, no longer smug, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes empty. There were no letters of support, no families defending her character, only shadows behind her. The courtroom was silent when the judge read the sentence: 3 years in prison, 2 years of probation, mandatory therapy. She didn't speak, not one word, but this time Maya did. She squeezed Darius's hand just once. And in that single gesture there was strength, the kind that only survivors carry. When they walked out of that courtroom, the weight hadn't lifted entirely, but the grip had loosened. That weekend, Darius took Maya to the park, the same one her mother used to take her, the same one she hadn't visited in over a year. The grass was damp, the sky cloudy, but she ran anyway, laughed, spun in circles until she fell. Her yellow dress twirled around her and her afro puff bounced with each step. He sat on the old wooden bench and just watched. And in that moment, watching her run free, untouched by fear, Darius realized something profound. All the wealth, the deals, the awards, none of it had protected her. Because safety isn't found in gates or marble floors, it's in presence, in listening, in being there when it matters most. She ran back to him, breathless and grinning, climbed into his lap like she had done when she was smaller. Wrapped her arms around his neck and whispered, "You won't leave again, right?" He kissed the top of her head, heart-breaking and mending all at once. Never again. He held her tighter, knowing full well that the world could still be cruel, but she wouldn't face it alone, not anymore. And that day, Darius Cole finally understood what it meant to be a father, not a provider, not a protector from a distance, but a constant, a home. Life didn't return to normal. Because normal no longer meant what it once did. There were no more frantic early morning calls, no briefcase always half-zipped, no calendar packed so tight that love had to be scheduled. That life, the one Darius had worn like a badge of honor, no longer fit. He had outgrown it, or maybe he had finally stepped out of it. The mansion, once echoing with loneliness, began to feel like a home again, a real one. With messy cereal spills, soft giggles echoing down the hallway, and crayons left behind on the kitchen table. The kind of home money couldn't build. Only time could. Darius didn't stop being a businessman, but he became something more powerful, a present father. The kind who showed up to school meetings. The kind who learned to braid hair with clumsy fingers. The kind who no longer needed an assistant to remind him of Maya's dance recital. And Maya, she blossomed. It didn't happen overnight. But piece by piece the fear faded, her drawings changed, the tears stopped, her laughter came more easily, her hugs tighter. She began to sleep through the night again, not with the lights on, but with a story in her heart and her father by her side. There were setbacks, of course. Shadows don't disappear forever, some linger, but now Maya knew she wasn't alone in the dark. And Darius, he knew he didn't just stop something terrible from continuing, he interrupted a cycle. One that could have stolen her spirit, rewritten her sense of safety, changed the way she looked at the world. But not anymore, because one man, flawed and imperfect, finally chose to stop running. He chose to stay, to show up, to listen when words were too hard to find, and to love in a way that wasn't just felt but lived. And it mattered. One night, long after Maya had fallen asleep under the warm glow of her nightlight, Darius sat on the edge of her bed, just watching her breathe. Her small chest rising and falling beneath the covers, her hand curled gently around her stuffed rabbit. In the quiet, he whispered a promise, not loud, not dramatic, just a simple truth carried by a father's voice: "I will never look away again." And that promise echoed through every moment that followed, every breakfast shared, every walk to school, every drawing pinned to the fridge, every story read out loud, because safety wasn't something he could buy her, it was something he had to be. It made all the difference. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect. If you're a parent, a sibling, a guardian, remember, presence matters more than perfection. And if you know someone who might need this story, share it. Because sometimes just one voice, one person paying attention can change everything. Don't forget to like this video if it touched your heart, subscribe for more powerful stories, and tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We read every word. Until next time, stay kind, stay alert, and most of all, stay close to the ones who need you.